By far, the most common condition that I see in my office is physiological stress. Physiological stress is not the stress that you necessarily feel from an emotional situation or mental situation. It can also be caused by toxins or changes in temperature, heat and cold, nutritional stress. There's lots of different kinds of stress. The stress system that we have in our body is designed to be survival. And the primary gland that's involved is the adrenal gland. Now, the adrenal gland is a little gland that sits on top of your kidneys, thus the name renal. Renal means kidney, ad means on top of, so the name is for location. And it makes a bunch of different hormones. When we encounter a stress, the adrenal gland will respond with something called cortisol, or I like to call it stress juice. The adrenal gland also makes other things that are important for your physiology, and it affects a lot of different parts of the body. So when the adrenal gland becomes malfunctioning, its effect on health can be very wide-ranging. So simply, your adrenal gland deals with oncoming stresses. So in the old days, you might have been running away from a bear or a saber-toothed tiger, and that may happen maybe once in a while. And assuming you survived the attack of the saber-toothed tiger, you'd have lots of time before the next attack probably, because you didn't run into him that often. But in today's society, we have stresses coming at us all the time. When we drive on the highway, when we have to rush to work to take care of our children. The pace of living is very high. We stare at bright lights an awful lot, from your computer screen to your TV. We stare at straight ahead when we're driving. Our bodies are not designed to do that. So the stresses are oncoming all the time. If you have a lot of stress, your adrenal gland will actually get bigger in order to make more. Again, I'm going to call it stress juice. But if those stresses are coming on for long periods of time, eventually your adrenal gland will shrivel up like a little raisin, and its ability to produce will become very limited. So it's only going to produce when it absolutely has a life or death situation. When that happens, your body is in an extreme state of fatigue. So we call this a chronic fatigue situation. It's one of the causes of chronic fatigue. So here's what your adrenal gland does and why it's so important. It makes that stuff called cortisol, which again is the stress juice, but cortisol also helps with being an anti-inflammatory hormone. Cortisone, you might have heard of. The adrenal gland helps control the tone of your ligaments. So when your adrenal glands are run down, your joints can actually become very sloppy to the point where as a chiropractor, I see patients that when you line up the spine, the ligaments won't even hold it in place. Some patients won't even get out the door before they're out of adjustment. It helps control your blood sugar, and so it makes glucocorticoids, which help keep your blood sugar at an even level. So if you go a long period of time without eating, your blood sugar can drop. The adrenal gland is supposed to come in and help that, but if the adrenal gland is basically used up, this is one of the reasons we see people with hypoglycemia. On the other hand, if you're trying to make your adrenal gland better, eating very frequently helps take some of the stress off it, because it doesn't have to work so much. Your adrenal gland will help get rid of excess fluid. It makes something called aldosterone, which interacts with the kidney to help you regulate how much fluid you have or release in your body. It interacts with your thyroid gland, and then it makes something called pregnenolone, which is differentiated into many different reproductive hormones, because your adrenal gland is your backup reproductive gland. It makes estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, and DHEA. And so when you're in a state where your reproductive glands are under stress, or they're starting to shut down, as in menopause, your adrenal gland is supposed to get bigger and put out more pregnenolone so you can make extra estrogen and progesterone. But if you've already tapped out your adrenal gland, you don't have a backup player, and so your hormone levels will just plummet. It also will interact with your pituitary gland and eventually your brain. So the adrenal gland is so important. If you can keep this guy happy, it affects many different systems in your body. And if it's been run down, we have ways in which we can replenish it. If you do the right things and don't do the wrong things, your adrenal gland can come back to a normal size and function.